Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to do a compilation of my favorite pumpkin projects in 2023. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I've kind of hit another roadblock. We were up working on the property and I was on a ladder and it was falling. And rather than fall with the ladder, I jumped off and I've broken my knee. So I'm struggling to get into my craft room to work. So I think I'm going to be able to make it work. But right now, it's kind of difficult to get in there. And so in order to keep my videos going for a while, I'm going to just start pulling some of my old videos and using those instead. So I may add another craft here and there because I was working on some items that I had started in a video when this happened. So I'll work those into some of these. Now what I've done here is taken a foam pumpkin, and this was a very good quality foam pumpkin, so it wasn't hollow in the inside. And as you could see, after I painted this, and I painted it in the color tea rose, and that's a mixture actually of tea rose, half tea rose, and half buttercream. And then I base coated this, and the reason I did that obviously is because I'm doing the lace over the top, and the lace is going to show the color through some. So I wanted that pink to be showing through, and what I've done is just cut a large circle, and now I'm just kind of very carefully working the lace into the hole that I had to kind of carve out myself. Now I know this didn't wrap perfectly, but I have some other plans for it that will hide any of the flaws. And so I'm just kind of gluing everything down the best that I can. Now this is a wood finial that I actually thrifted this and some stuff, and it's going to work perfect for this. And I'm painting this in the color buttercream, and I actually end up putting 2 coats on this, and once that dries, then I'm going to add some gold gilding wax. And I ended up, my plan was actually to use a little bit, and I ended up using more than I wanted to, or that I planned to. But this is a metal candle stand that I have painted in the color buttercream. I didn't worry about the top much because I'm going to be gluing that pumpkin to the top. But here I'm adding that same gilding wax, and this is from Dixie Belle, over some of the high spots in the candlestick. And as you can see, this has some design on it, and so this is really bringing that out, and you couldn't see it much at all before I did this. So this one is a shabby chic style pumpkin, and while I don't do a lot of these, I think I enjoy these probably more than any that I've made. So I was really worried about how I was going to continue to do my videos after I learned that it was broken. And my husband came up with this idea, and I have seen other YouTubers do this. And some of my videos are so far back that a lot of you have missed them anyway, if you haven't been with me from the beginning. And those of you who have been, maybe this will be a little reminder. And I just thought it was a really good idea because I was really concerned about what I was going to do. And but I'm going to work some of mine in that I have been already working on. I don't know that I'll get one on this video, but I'm going to be doing that in some of my other ones. And then hopefully I'll be able to get my craft room cleaned out enough to where I can get through there good in my chair and be able to craft. And if that happens, then obviously I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands, so maybe I'll be able to do even more videos. So I'm just hot gluing this on, and now this is resin, and what I did was I had some molds here, and any of these items that I'm using here that I can link in the description, I'm going to look them up. This is an old video, so may not be the easiest, but this is called Amazing Resin, and it's so easy to work with. You mix, it actually comes with a part A and B, and you mix equal parts of them and stir them up well and pour them in your mold, and literally within 10 minutes you have your finished mold. And so you're able to just kind of glue that on. But this is a little pricey, not terribly, but a little pricey. But it's so great to work with because, again, you just don't have to wait on anything. You can watch it hardening as it sits. And but you could also, if you don't want to buy the resin, you could use hot glue. And if you use hot glue in your molds, you don't have to put anything in them to make them come out of the mold. You don't have to either with the resin. But the only thing is with the hot glue, you can't use this little low temp glue gun like I'm using. You have to use a high temp for it to turn out good. And then obviously you have to paint your molds when they're finished. A lot of these I paint anyway. And for this one, I ended up adding some of that same tea rose color and just dry brushing it over my roses, and then dry brushing some green over my leaves. And so I painted them anyway. I was able to let some of the white show through. And here I'm adding some of that gold gilding wax to them also. I thought that was what I was going to leave it as. And then I decided to add the color in. But again, I just dry brushed it on, and as you can see, it's a very faint amount of the color, but it gave it just a really shabby chic look. And then I added a hang tag to this, and this one was finished. For project number 2, I am taking this foam pumpkin also. This is just another one that I had in my stash that I had thrifted at some point. And I'm taking a knife here. You could use an X-Acto knife, or I'm just using a utility knife. And I am cutting, or just kind of slicing down into some of these sections. Now, I don't want to slice between all of them, but I'm just kind of slicing a little bit thicker areas. In some cases, I'll be adding more than one section in my sliced section, if that makes sense. But I'm going to just kind of outline all of these with this knife. And you could use a regular knife also, because this is pretty easy to cut, but you're just going to go through the whole pumpkin and just make some sliced sections. And then you're going to take a piece of fabric that is just cut somewhat of the size that you need, because what you're going to do is just I'm just using a regular butter knife here and tucking it down inside those slices. And so what you're going to be doing is just covering this pumpkin, but instead of tucking it into the center that you cut out, you're going to just tuck it into each of these slices. So this takes a little bit longer, but it gives it a different look, and it's just a really neat look. This one is also going to be more of a shabby chic pumpkin. And although I'm using chenille here to cover this, I'm using a very thin chenille spread. I wouldn't want to try this with a thicker fabric. It is, however, thick enough that I didn't feel the need to paint the pumpkin first. And if I were using a thin enough one that you could see through somewhat, or even maybe if I were using a thin white, then I would definitely need to paint it first. But this worked out just the color that it was, and I just kind of went through, and I thought what I did here was slice all of the slices down first and then cover them, but I think I'm just doing this one at a time here. You could do it either way, and I would think that slicing all of them first would probably be the better option. And before anyone asks, I am doing fine with my knee. It is definitely broken, but I actually go today to get a better x-ray, actually CT scan, to see how bad the break is. And that will determine what I will actually be able to do. But I think it's just going to require an extended period of time completely off of it. So I'm just going to have to make this work. And again, I'm going to have so much extra time on my hands that maybe that will actually help my channel instead. So now I'm just continuing one slice at a time, and there's no need for glue here because it's such a snug fit that it doesn't need it. So I'm just going to do that a little at a time and until I have the whole thing covered. And then I cut the corners from this doily, and I'm going to use those to kind of mimic leaves. And I just need a couple on here. I could actually put lace all the way around the top, but for this I'm kind of going for giving it the illusion of leaves. Now I don't know if you can tell here, but I did get just a tiny bit of that orange showing through because of this fabric being so thin, but it was such a small amount that it didn't bother me at all. And once the pumpkin was finished and I had it accessorized, it wasn't noticeable at all. But if you're starting with just a regular white styrofoam pumpkin, then obviously you won't have this problem at all. And if you're using a colored one like I am, then maybe it's best to go ahead and base coat it first. But here I just hot glued the tip of the makeshift leaves, and I didn't glue them completely down because I want them to have more of a 3D look. And then I'm just going to add that stem back on. But first I dry brush some of the color buttercream over the top of it. I also added just a little bit of hot glue to make it secure. Project number 3 is not actually a pumpkin, but a picture of a pumpkin. But this is going to be more of a textured and 3D picture of a pumpkin. Now I've slowed this part of the video way down so that I can make it very clear how easy a pumpkin is to draw, because that's what we want. We want a picture of a pumpkin that is in sections. So you start out by that long oblong area in the middle, and then you connect two to each side, and you just kind of want it to kind of hook on to that, if that makes sense. And then you're going to go up with that last one just a little bit taller and connect it. You're going to do that on both sides. I know that looks funny, but we're going to fix that. But that last section does need to be somewhat taller than the others. Now, whether you make your pumpkin taller or shorter or wider, that's completely up to you, because we all know that there are many shapes to pumpkins. So now I'm going to take that stem just outside that center section and bring it kind of to a peak at the top. And then I'm going to close that off. Now you could let it just keep going and you could add vines to it if you wanted, but I'm just making this one a little bit more simplified. Then you go from that last section and you add a half circle down to the second slice. And then you do that with the very back one to the stem. So if you need to go over this different times, then that's fine. Just that is the hardest part there is the top. But as you can see, it's actually very simple. It's just kind of hard to remember what exactly to do. But that gives your pumpkin more of a 3D look. And now, after I've drawn this, I'm going to cut all of these sections apart and use them as a pattern. Now, I've drawn this on cardstock so that it makes an easier pattern. So once I get all the sections cut apart, including the stem, then I covered each of those with one layer of a napkin. So I just decoupaged on this. Now you could use you could use scrapbook paper or just whatever you want on each of these slices, but I just found that the easiest and most economical thing to do is just put one layer of a napkin on it. And I just glued that on with some Mod Podge, and you could use regular school glue here, but I covered each section. And you can just kind of create whatever pattern you want, depending on what colors you want in your pumpkin. And then obviously the stem would need to be a different color. But I covered all of these, and once I had them covered and they were dried well, then I just took some Distress ink and went around all the edges of each of these. I also used my little hand sander and sanded around the edges to clean those up good first. Now I just used a piece of board here, and I just used something I had in my stash that was the size that I wanted. And I just dry brushed some color on it. I didn't want full coverage here. That was the background that I was going for. But you could do a solid background or just white or whatever you like. This is just the color that I chose, but now you're just going to piece it back together, kind of like piecing a puzzle, and everything is just going to get glued on. Now, I used Mod Podge to glue mine on, but you could use regular glue, or you could use even hot glue because you've got the thickness of the cardstock, and your hot glue is not likely to show. So I felt like this had somewhat of a cloth look to it, so I decided to add some other touches to the board that were cloth, and this is just a piece of torn, I think this is tea towel here that I'm trimming out with. And I also used some of the jute trim from the Dollar Tree to glue over the top of that to add more texture and dimension. And then I finished it off by making a shabby bow out of the same kinds of material and gluing that around the neck of the pumpkin, and then this one was finished. Project number 4 was a different variation of this one. I drew that pumpkin out again on some cardstock. And this time I cut the image out as a whole. And then I traced it on some old music sheet. I then took some Distress ink and went all the way around the whole pumpkin. After that, I just kind of sketched the details back into the pumpkin. So kind of like drawing it all over again, and you can kind of see where you need to go because of the shape of the pumpkin. So I just very lightly drew that out because I didn't want the lines to show. I just wanted to be able to know where I needed to do my shading. And so I'm just using my Distress ink and very, very lightly with just the tip of the sponge going around the outer edge of each of these sections. Doing a little bit of extra shading around the top and especially around the bottom gives it more of a realistic look. But this one is just more of a neutral look of the one that I did before. And then I'm going to cut some raffia grass on this one and glue it across the bottom to resemble hay or straw. And then I'm going to make a raffia grass bow to go around the top. And that keeps this one really natural, but it has a really pretty fall look. And the good thing about this one is it doesn't take much material at all. And if you don't have access to old sheet music, then you can always print some off from online and use that. But most people can get their hands on at least some sheet music, and I just think it just really works for this. You could also use old book pages. In this case, it would need to be a large book. But there's just all kinds of options for this. I think also if you wanted to use some scrapbook paper for this, you could do the same effect on scrapbook paper and still it would work out really well. Now, as you can see here, I'm doing some additional shading on the board itself, just around the pumpkin. What you do behind it obviously is not going to show, but I just wanted a little bit of shading around the back because it will make this pumpkin pop a little more and give it more dimension. I also cut some raffia grass into smaller pieces and glued it to the bottom to resemble straw. And I did use hot glue to secure that on because I didn't feel like the regular glue would hold that. And when I made my raffia grass bow to go on top, I added some little strips of a torn tea towel just to add a little bit more character to my shabby bow. And since I used some of the fabric in with the raffia bow, I decided to use some torn strips and glue onto the top and the bottom along with some jute ribbon. And then I felt like that pulled everything together. Project number 5 is very simple. I just took a regular foam pumpkin, and this one had a nice light color on it, so I'm not going to have to paint it first. If yours is orange or has too much color on it, then you will want to paint this a neutral color first, preferably a light neutral color. And then I had these fall colored napkins, and I think I bought these in 2022, I think, maybe 23, at Marshall's. And although this is not limited to fall, it is very pretty fall colors. And so I just tore some of the napkin, and I didn't cut this out. This is one layer of a napkin, by the way. Most napkins have a few layers. I think this one did have, but I just removed the layer that had the print only, and I'm just decoupaging it on here. To make this not have any wrinkles, you would need to cut small or tear smaller sections. But on the pumpkins, I welcome the wrinkles. I think it just adds more character. So I just used as many napkins as it took to cover this. And then, and now I'm just going to add a stem. And for the stem on this one, I simply added a little drawer pull and glued it with some hot glue to the top. Now you could add leaves if you wanted, but that's all I did. Project number 6 is another styrofoam pumpkin, and this one is one of them from the Dollar Tree, so it is hollow, and I painted it somewhat with a white color, but I didn't worry about full coverage. I just want to make sure that if any of this is showing, it isn't showing that bright orange. And for this one, I need to cut a hole both in the top and the bottom. And when you remove that stem, you usually have a hole, but I also cut a hole in the bottom. And what I'm going to do is take some book pages and just really, really twist them up and cover the pumpkin with that. So I just tore out several pages, and the larger the page, the better, just to make sure that you have enough to stretch from the top to the bottom. But I'm just going to hot glue that in. So this one takes a little bit, but really doesn't take that long. And I'm just going to glue it all the way around and back into the bottom. And I'm just going to keep adding these until that I can't see any of the pumpkin. And I do recommend using a low temp glue gun here, simply because if you do touch it, you're not as likely to burn yourself. And then once the whole pumpkin is covered, then I'm going to add some color. And I'm using the color, this is the color Terracotta by Dixie Belle. And I'm just dry brushing some color on it. I don't want full coverage. I want actually for you to be able to see some of the wording on these pages. You could also water down your paint and paint it that way. But I didn't want to get this too wet, is why I chose to kind of dry brush it on there instead, so that I didn't wet the pages so much that they didn't hold with the hot glue. So I wanted just the paint, the actual moisture from the paint, to be on the outside only. So I went over the whole thing. And you can kind of play with your colors here. You could add some greens and some whites or whatever. But I liked the look of the pages so much that just having that little bit of the terracotta was perfect. Now here is another option that I could have done, is I could have twisted these ahead of time and let them dry and then glued them on, and that would have worked fine. But I am doing that with the stem here. So I'm painting this in the color, I think I'm using the color pine cone here. And so I had to let that dry, and now I'm gluing it into the top of the pumpkin. And to finish this off, I added some leaves and a hang tag. And that's all that I did to mine. You could, however, add some Spanish moss around the top or whatever you think will dress it up to where you'll like it. But for me, just a couple of leaves and a hang tag finished this one off. Project number 7 is made from a bag, and this is just a burlap sack. I happen to have several of these that I used to sell, and they just somehow quit selling, and I still have several in my stash. But I'm painting this sack in the color terracotta, and this will obviously add the color. Again, I want to leave just a little bit of that showing through, but it also changes the texture somewhat and stiffens it up a little bit more, and I just like the look of that also. Now I'm putting some pebbles down in the bottom for weight because I want this pumpkin to stand up, and I'm going to be stuffing it with polyfill, but the polyfill obviously won't make it stand. So I'm just kind of distributing those pebbles in the bottom so that it has a good flat bottom and has enough weight that it will stand up when I'm finished. And then I just stuff the bag as much as I feel like it needs it for the pumpkin. And then I tie off the top with some jute twine. Now I don't put jack-o'-lantern faces on mine or anything, but you could definitely do that. Or you could make a scarecrow from this, a scarecrow face. But I'm just tying the top of it, and then I decided to cut most of the excess off, and for the reason that I don't want all that excess, but I also don't want the finished edge. So I just cut it and then did some fraying of my own just by pulling around the top of it a lot. And I felt like that was a better look for the top of this. And then I just found a stick in the yard and cut it the size that I wanted for the stem. I wanted it extra long, that way I could put it down in there quite a bit. And then I secured that with glue around the top. And now I can just add some embellishments around the top. So for the embellishments, I just used some faux leaves and glued those around the top. And these had wires that I could also wire them around. And then I tied some raffia grass around it and added a hang tag, and then this one was finished. Project number 8 is a really simple one, and I just had this old crock. I don't want to mess this up permanently because I really like it, but because it's shaped almost like a pumpkin, all that I'm going to need to do to it is put a stem in the top of it, and I'm just going to put one in that will hold, that's just small enough to go in it, and I'm having to sand it because it doesn't quite fit in, but I'm sanding it just enough to get it in there and for it to stay. This is not one that I'm selling. This is one that I will use in my home to decorate with. I love to have neutral decor, and I love to use things that I don't have to store. So after fall, all I have to do is take the leaves that I'm tying on around the top of it off, and then this will be my regular crock that I have. So this makes a neat little neat little decoration with almost no work. And project number 9 is also a very simple one. I just happened to have this old book that was the color that I wanted, and this is just a cookbook of some kind. And all that I need to do with this is put an old silver-plated butter knife in the top of it. And then I will tie this together and add something around the top, and I will have a little makeshift pumpkin. And again, it hasn't done anything to destroy my book, and I can use it for whatever I need to use it for, or just as a book, but I can use this to decorate with through the fall. I want to thank you guys for watching my videos and for all your patience with my channel lately. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.